All right, wait a minute. You have to have a little bit of me in there so it's going. Is it rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get my phone. All right, we're ready.
All right. So, hi, my name is Lexie Wise, and the novel I chose was called Many Children Left Behind, and it was collaborated by Deborah Meyer, Alfie Kahn, Linda Darling Hammond, Theodore Sizer, I think, and George Wood. And today I hope to enlighten you all on the rise of the No Child Left Behind Act and how it has caused more damage than good in today's public school systems across America. Because this book covered such a broad surface concerning public education, and that's all what we're about to go into as future educators, I decided its main idea or central theory was the creation of a truly fair and powerful system of public schools in America and how No Child Left Behind damages this dream. So originally I picked Deborah Meyer as my educational theorist since she and George Wood were the primary editors of this novel. However, I decided to shine the spotlight on Linda Darling Hammond instead. Linda is the Charles D. Common Professor of Education at Stanford University School of Education. She received her Bachelor of Arts from Yale University and her Doctorate in Education from Temple University. She has served as leader of President Obama's Education Policy Transition Team in 2008. She has also more than 200 publications, including The Right to Learn and Teaching as a Learning Profession. So what exactly is the No Child Left Behind Act? To be honest, before this project, I had heard of it, but I never really knew what exactly it was or how it applied to public education and what are the effects of it. But in 2002, President George W. Bush signed into law the No Child Left Behind Act, which promises the public school system that all children, regardless of race, socioeconomic status, gender, creed, color, or disability, will have equal access to an education. To ensure this promise, three key concepts had to happen, which include increasing the funding for schools that serve the poor, ensuring that every child would be taught by highly qualified teachers, holding schools that take federal funds accountable for raising achievement of every student by disaggregating their achievement data. So the history behind this, No Child Left Behind was built off of many important landmarks in educational reform history. A few of these radical Supreme Court decisions include the Brown versus Board of Education Act in 1954, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, and it was the desegregating of blacks and whites in public schools. Also, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act in 1975 for for children with handicaps and learning disabilities that opened schoolhouse doors to full and free access. And most importantly was the ESEA Act in 1965, and this actually staked out the earliest claims of the achievement gap between the rich and the poor, which is the initial idea behind the No Child Left Behind Act, is to close in the gap between poor and disadvantaged students versus the achievement that wealthy and well-advantaged students, like there's just this enormous gap that this act really wants to close. And okay, so even though the ideas and the goals of this act are really have great intentions, the author of this book, and especially Linda Darling Hammond, disagree. In order for this law to be successful, there are many changes that have to take place. According to this legislation, too many children are being left behind either by attending failing or unsafe schools, receiving poor teaching, leaving school altogether, and performing well below potential. Darling Hammond points out that the bill's only way to change this problem is by focusing schools' attention on improving test scores for all groups of students, providing parents with more educational choices, and ensuring better qualified teachers. However, since No Child Left Behind judges schools solely on test scores, schools have students who do poorly on these tests will suffer the most because they have the most pressure on them to do well, because their gap of like improvement is far like higher than someone who is very smart and has really good resources and economic background versus someone who is in poverty. So they're really putting pressure on these students who are Latino background, African American, foreign language students. They're putting all this pressure on them, to do well in these tests, and if they don't, they push them out of the schools. Like, they'll ask them to transfer if they don't help the school state average test scores. They'll push them out of the schools to transfer to another school, which doesn't even make sense. And that's what they explain in this novel. But also, the results studies include that they narrow the teaching and curriculum, and it takes out really like the beauty that's in teaching and the learning, because teachers are so scared that they might lose their jobs and their schools will get graded or evaluated badly because of these test scores. And also, that just limits the school experience for the teachers and the children, because I just remember, like, especially in 10th grade and like 9th and 10th grade, like I remember the pressure that teachers and our whole school, like, they would bribe us, like, hey, if y'all do well on these tests, you'll get a free pizza. Whoever's class does the best, you'll get a free pizza Friday or something. And I was like, that sounds great and sounds really, because I love pizza, but I don't know if I can do well on this test. And it's just a little illustration. And it says, Miss Jenkins, why isn't Pluto a planet anymore? So he's really curious, and the teacher's like, that's a good question, Jimmy, but it won't be on the standardized test, so I'm afraid we don't have time to discuss it. Next. So that's sad to me, but I thought it's funny, but at the same time it's really true, and that's how some classes are. Alright, so to me personally, I think the beauty behind testing and education is that all children are diverse learners and have different cultures and qualities that make them who they are. And that's really why I wanted to become a teacher, is like, I am very observant, and so like I can't wait to be in a class and see all of my students, like the different ways they each learn and their personalities, and how I can like work with that together to learn something as a whole class. I loved my lively classroom discussions my English teachers promoted in high school, but according to the study, No Child Left Behind, many teachers are feeling pressured to cut off things like intriguing classroom debates, school field trips, and even good literature and meaningful stories. Kristen Von Wald, who is the head of the Association for Experimental Education, exclaims that anything that doesn't directly contribute to higher test scores will be scrutinized very carefully. And so teachers and educators are scared that if their schools do not perform or meet the AYP, which is the adequate yearly progress, that they will be punished or lose their, or worse, even lose their jobs. So in this novel, they provide several case studies in the U.S. in which the No Child Left Behind causes collateral damage. And one that stuck out to me was a study in Texas, which Texas is where the No Child Left Behind Act originated. And it shows how a reliance on test scores has affected serving our neediest children. And the study found that the rush to test and measure has led to the following: reducing the quality and quantity of curriculum, removing education expenditures away from high-quality curricular resources such as laboratory supplies and books, teaching and test prep practices that violate what is known about how children learn, widening the gap between the education of children in Texas' poorest schools and the schools that are available to more privileged children. So before I move on, like this, and there's probably around like 9 different studies in different states how it's just damaging, it's putting just unnecessary pressure, but they feel that it's necessary because we're scared that our they want equality for the poor and the wealthy to come together and close the gap between the learning experiences and how well they do on tests. But it's not doing anything but causing more damage than good, because what they're doing is, if children, like it was really emphasized, like if children don't do well, they'll, y'all have heard of RTI. Well, they'll go to a response intervention, but if they don't do well there, they'll be encouraged, hey, you might need to switch schools. And then that really leads to them dropping out. And that's why this has also caused way more dropout rates before No Child Left Behind Act was even created. And what does that even, like, that's not even productive if it's causing more children to drop out than do good on their standardized tests. So how do we fix this? No Child Left Behind provides little to no support for their claim. Linda Darling-Hammond concludes that at the heart of these reforms must be a recognition that public education is in many ways the very foundation of our democracy and the public institution that defines the people's concept of public. If we really care about Leave No Child Behind, our policies should invest in public schools in all communities, encouraging teaching and assessment that supports higher order thinking and performance, create a two-way accountability to parents and children for the quality of education they receive. And with this, she also spends a lot of time in her chapters in the book that the only way to give children a serious and high-quality education is if we make the schools worthy of our trust, and like our trust with the parents having trust in us, and just being a community and working together rather than feeling pressured by these standardized tests that we don't need. Some parents, I bet they don't even understand what it really is, like this No Child Left Behind Act. And even the name sounds great and all, but what it does is not what it sounds like. When all the stakes rest on the hands of distant authorities, the data